the South African national anthem. Sung across the continent, a liberatory vision of people building, sweating, and toiling for a new world. He met people determined to be free, willing to take on settler regime backed by Western capitalist nations by any means necessary. In his brief essay, we could see Cedric coming to terms with the black radical tradition. The African, unable to operate openly, resorted to the only weapons he had been allowed to keep, his minds and his hands. He burned down missions and farms in the country areas because he was not strong enough yet to face the guns in the cities and townships. Where meetings are banned or closely watched, he sings spirituals as the American slave did 100 years ago, to tell his people that they will be free soon again soon. He has sent delegations repeatedly to the UN to plead for his life. He has not been rejected, but he has not been effectively helped either. But still he tries. That just gave me an idea, y'all. That just gave me an idea. Oh my goodness. Don't you ever love that when like books really like when you're reading a book, that shit is speaking. I hope that this doesn't get like taken down for the language that I'm using, but I'm reading a book. YouTube. I need to put a little. I have to sneeze. Oh my goodness. And I just ordered the Norton anthology. Friends. Sorry for the interruption. He situates the revolt in Zimbabwe within a global context that links the third world to the plight of Black America. I love rereading. Of the third world to the plight of Black America. Africa understands, Asia understands, you and I and the millions of blacks in the US, Brazil, and the West Indies understand. Not because we are black or brown, but because we have lived it and we are living it now. That rhymes. In a letter to his Aunt Lillian and Uncle Bill Key, he had been more explicit about how Southern Africa clarified and bolstered his identification with radical nationalism. Americans are afraid of nationalism, he mused. So Negroes are admonished not to use terms such as black folk, but as a... Girl! Hold up. Give me 3 seconds so I can look up this word and what it means. Friends, I really do need a dictionary. I think that should be next on my list. I need to get a job. Ooh, yeah.
Recalcitrant.
Oh! Recalcitrant.
Recalcitrant.
Having an obstinately uncooperative attitude towards authority or discipline. Uncooperative. Per.
Recalcitrant.
But as a recalcitrant nationalist, it was one of my greatest thrills to come to this place, to see my people, and in Nairobi, see them function as complete and responsible human beings. The smallest thing is significant to those who are hungry. The smallest thing is significant to those who are hungry. Cedric returned to Berkeley hungrier than ever. He experienced the global character of white supremacy, bore witness to Africans determined to be free in their own terms, and found indigenous music and dance an imperative to participate and unite as one. Ooh, and the way that dance and spirituals and oh my god. I love when books speak. The Black radical tradition that had begun to take shape in his political studies circles came into sharper focus, becoming flesh. In the meantime, Cedric earned his degree in 1963 and immediately began working for the Alameda County Probation Department. He wasn't on the job 1 month before he received a draft notice from the U.S. Army. His ROTC training and his college degree helped him get into this officer candidate school in the U.S. Army Artillery and Missile Center, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. In his spare time, he took classes at Cameron College in Lawton, Oklahoma, with the intention of earning an master's MA degree. I think it's master's. He didn't earn the master's, but he did complete officer training. Fortunately, Cedric was never deployed to Vietnam and chose not to accept another tour. He returned to Alameda County Probation Department to complete his training as a probation officer and met a new employee named Elizabeth Peters, the product of a middle-class Lebanese-American family born in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, a town established in 1942 as part of the Manhattan Project to build a nuclear weapon. Oh! Elizabeth also matriculated at Berkeley, but was 3 years behind Cedric. With a degree in criminology and a genuine concern for the fate of kids under the California Youth Authority, she became a counselor to Child Protective Services while Cedric worked with teens at the senior boys camp. Although they were both early proponents of what would later be called restorative justice, get into it, it became increasingly clear from the urban rebellions and unchecked state repression that the existing criminal justice system was beyond reform. That was my dryer. That scared the crap out of me. Sorry. Cedric and Elizabeth saw no future in probation, but they saw a future in each other. Aww. That's so cute. In August of 1967, they were married. Here we must excuse me. Here we must pause and acknowledge their symbolic intellectual partnership. Because two is better than one. Interdependence. All that fun stuff. Only Elizabeth can speak with authority on the subject, but it was clear that she became his most important interlocutor, especially as both developed intellectually. While he taught at the University of Michigan, she earned a master's degree in anthropology. She began to pursue doctoral studies in Binghamton and worked as a graduate assistant in sociology during the founding of the Ferdinand Brudel Center of the Study of Economics, Historical Systems, and Civilizations, but she never completed her PhD. Still, she was indispensable to Cedric. His acknowledgement to her in his doctoral dissertation speaks volumes. Elizabeth Robinson was the surest mentor of all. That's cute. That's real cute. In the fall of 1966, Cedric began a master's program in political science at San Francisco State University, but before he could finish his thesis, he was recruited by Stanford to pursue a PhD in political theory. He accepted its offer, but alerted his prospective mentors that he planned to challenge the discipline's most basic premises. They failed to heed his warning. I mean, he told them. Cedric's experience in Southern Africa and his study of African politics and culture ultimately led him to question Western democratic theory. In an essay titled African Politics, Progression or Regression, written for his Stanford graduate seminar on African politics taught by David Abernethy, Abernethy, then a young scholar who wrote on popular education in Africa, Robinson argued that the newly decolonized territories in Africa were not yet nations. Not only did they lack many of the characteristics of a nation, stable communities of people with a territory, history, culture, and language in common, but they had yet to be born, the Latin root of nation. That is to say, the birth The birth of the African nations required shedding Western political structures installed by colonialism and creating their own institutions. I already made a note of that. Big purr, big purr. More provocatively, he suggested that the modern nation state, in fact, a regression or a step backwards from stateless societies of some earlier in African history. Here he began to reveal the seeds of his argument in black Marxism, that the black petite bourgeoisie was disconnected from the political and cultural traditions that sustained anti-colonial movements in the past. Those living in exile or European educated, having portrayed the heritage of their predecessors in the 19th and earliest 20th centuries, those indigenous leaders who were committed through their own particular missions to the recovery of life with integrity for the masses of African people. Damn. Big purr. Of course, the alternative path he imagined was not based on modernization theory or industrialization, but something different. Perhaps what is needed are new political organizations, without single or even multiple leaders, but with no leaders at all. Leadership is a form which should be held and reserved for crisis. In developmental periods, leaders... Sorry, my sister started calling me. What if it was an emergency? It was. Perhaps what is needed are new political organizations without single or even multiple leaders, but with no leaders at all. Leadership is a form which should be held and reserved for crisis. In developmental periods, leader directives could be replaced by values, goals, community, and mutual identifications. That is a sophisticated social organization. A primitive organization is one where the courts are filled with defendants bound and gagged, or where its citizens must be shot down in the street. He's calling the West primitive. He said, y'all are backwards. And they are. The West is backwards. That's too good. Are filled with defendants bound and gagged, or where the citizens must be shot down in the streets and terrorized into fitful conformity. In a sophisticated social organization, its members act with decency because they respect each other and possess a code of ethics in common. That's too good. His doctoral dissertation, Leadership, a Mythic Paradigm, essentially demolishes the Western presumption that mass movements reflect social order and are maintained and rationalized by authority of leadership. Oh, this is too good. Sorry, y'all. I'm rereading. Challenging the conceits. Conceits of liberal and Marxist theories of political change, Cedric argues that leadership and political order are essentially fictions. He ultimately concludes that it is not enough to reshape or reformulate Marxist theory to fit the needs of Third World Revolution. Instead, he proposed rejecting all universalist theories of political and social order. His critique on the provincialization tendencies of Western sciences reappears in Black Marxism, which is to say, the presumptions that European historical phenomenon is universal, specifically the presumption that the nation-state is natural, logical advance in the development of humankind. He said, that's what he said to the West. He said, y'all are backwards, y'all are abnormal, and primitive. That's what he said. In his dissertation, Cedric returns to Zambia and looks to the Tonga for evidence of successful societies that do not depend on the authority of rulers or political leaders to function. For him, these are successful modes of social organization, the proof of their being, their ability to survive war, famine, and other disasters, and keep harmony with the environment. The Tonga represented a model of social stability and social integration more effective than one finds in the West under the modern nation state. He writes, the Tonga have come into possession of an understanding of human organization that gives little prominence to the familiars of private versus public, autonomy versus subject, secret, shared, interest, exclusion, oppositions. Each element of Tonga consciousness embraces another to secure its own vitality, interdependence, right? A game of life of running, jumping, spinning for 1,000-headed millipede beast whose members would each, if served, to be unfit to survive. Oh, excuse me. Let me read that again. A game of life of running, jumping, spinning for 1,000-headed millipede beast whose members would each, if severed, would be unfit to survive. Meaning, you can't. If you go off independently alone, girl, you gone. You need each other. We need each other. We see each other. Community. Interdependence. We depend on each other because we're human beings. That's what it's saying. That's what he's saying in that. In other words, he found in the Tonga people a society completely antithetical to the Western emphasis on individual autonomy. See, sometimes I need to shut up and just finish the rest of the paragraph. Oh, that's too funny. He called the principle that all are equally incomplete. Oh. Therefore, they require each other and all of life itself, land, animals, and plants, to become complete. That is so cute and informative and very true. I mean, think about, like, as an individual in the life, like, you know how it's like, okay, la-di-da-di-da, I'm walking around life. I'm going to be in relation to the earth, right? If it's raining outside, would I go outside in a bikini? No. I'm going to work with the earth to be, you know what I mean? Because, like, oh, I'm an individual. No. The weather doesn't affect me. The weather doesn't affect me. I'm an individual. I control me. Then I get sick. How can I work with the earth so I don't get sick? That's just like the first example that came to mind. But you know that it's much more than that. Anyways, let me get off my tangent. Cedric's dissertation was submitted in 1971 in terms of, like, the Earth, but also in relation to the Earth. Like, when we destroy the Earth, then it's becoming inhabitable. Think about the way that these big corporations are literally destroying the Earth, and then that in reflection to climate change. You hit the Earth, she's gonna hit back. She's gonna hit back. She said, I don't give a fuck. Oh, she said, y'all, it's hot. It's hot. I'm turning up the heat. Y'all keep hitting me. I'm turning up the heat. I'ma come back. Are you? And that is scary. But I will move on. Cedric's dissertation was submitted in 1971, but the faculty did not know what to make of it. The most of the original members resigned from his committee, citing an inability to understand the work. Only after Cedric threatened legal action was his thesis finally accepted, nearly 4 years later. It was finally published in 1980 as The Terms of Order, Political Science and the Myth of Leadership. We should read that. Almost exactly as it was written in 1971. As he awaited Stanford's decision, Cedric accepted a tenure-track position in the political science and Black studies at the University of Michigan. During his and Elizabeth's short stay at Michigan, they created a unique political and intellectual space for students and colleagues to study Black radicalism. Cedric's closest colleagues included Archie Singham, the independent Marxist from Sri Lanka, who wrote about anti-colonialism in the Third World, William W. Ellis. Ooh, we should collect those names. William W. Ellis, whose dissertation examined African voting in the UN General Assembly, Joel Samoff, the radical Africanist known for his writings on class formation, underdevelopment, and socialism in Tanzania, and his anti-apartheid activism, as well as radical anthropologist Marshall Shallons. I think I said that wrong. Sahlins and Mick Taussig, Taussig. Cedric also invited C.L.R. James, Sylvia Wynter, Walter Rodney, Grace Lee, and James Boggs to engage the community, which undoubtedly deepened his own knowledge of Western Marxism, the Black radical tradition, constructions of race, and racial capitalism. In 1973, Cedric accepted a position at the State University of New York at Binghamton, first in political science and later in sociology. He was also appointed chair of the Department of Afro-American and African Studies, and he influenced the Brudel Center's intellectual formation, founded and run by Terence K. Hopkins and Emmanuel Walterstein. And it was there, traversing the worlds of Black studies, historical sociology, and world systems analysis, that most of the pieces came together that would become Black Marxism. The work took 6 years to complete. He began writing in Binghamton, wrote much of the manuscript during a sabbatical in England, in the village of Radwinter, just south of Cambridge, and completed it soon after he became the director of the Center for Black Studies Research and professor of political science at the University of California, Santa Barbara. When the London-based Zed Press published Black Marxism in 1983, few could have predicted the impact it would have on political theory, political economy, historical analysis, Black studies, Marxist studies, or our general understanding of the rise of the modern world. It appeared with fanfare. For years, it was treated as a curiosity, grossly misunderstood or simply ignored. Given its current rebirth, some may argue Black Marxism was simply ahead of its time. Or, to paraphrase the sociologist George Lipschitz, quoting the late activist Ivory Perry, perhaps Cedric was on time, but the rest of us were late. How we determine where we are depends on our conception of time. Girl. Cedric took Marx's historical materialism to task in part of its conception of time and temporality. From the terms of order and anthropology of Marxism, he consistently critiqued Marxism for its fidelity to a he criticized Marx for staying within like a static view of history and it being like linear, as if like the past, present, and future are not right here in this very moment. Like right now, it's the past, present, and future with like every breath. And then when you think about that in terms of like the structures that are in place, the same structures that are in place during like the Atlantic slave trade type shit, during slavery, when how we learn about it, those same structures are still in place, and therefore, history, it just keeps going and going and going and going type of shit. That's how I kind of like think about that. Yet at the same time, as much as time has changed, these things still say the same. Like that quote, that's what I'm thinking when I'm seeing that, right? Stadial, Stadial view of history and to linear time or teleology. By dismissing a stadial, let's look up that word. But it sounds like static. Stadial. Oh, I'm wrong. Oh, looking at things in stages. That's a contemporary terminology and discussion of stages of society by theoretical means. Okay. That I was wrong. He did not believe revolts occur at certain stages or only when the objective conditions are ripe. The same applies for books or ideas, and yet there is something in Cedric, perhaps his grandfather's notion of faith, that related to some utopian elements of Marxism, notably the commitment to hold up.
Eschatological.
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 Eschatological. Eschatological stages. Eschatological time. Eschatological time. What does that mean? In the history of religion, the term immortality of the soul, rebirth, resurrection, like things never die, I guess, and the end of time. Let's look at another eschatological, notably the end of times rooted. Oh, okay. It says first there's like the end of times and then immortality of the soul, rebirth. Okay, per. Rooted in earlier Christian notions of prophecy. Anyone who read the Communist Manifesto or sang the Internationale will recognize the promise of proletarian victory and a socialist future. He considered the absence of the promise of a certain future a unique feature of Black radicalism. Only when the radicalism is costumed or achieves the envelope of Black Christianity, he explained in a 2010 lecture, is there a certainty to it. Otherwise, it is a kind of resistance that does not promise triumph or victory at the end, only liberation. Pop off. No nice package at the end, not only that you would be free, only the promise of liberation, only the promise of liberation. Pop off, King. There's no end to it. Ooh, I have another, that just made me think of something. Oh, we're free, but are we really? Come back. Well, right now. I'm going to cross out that note. The only thing we want is liberation. Only the process of liberation captures the essence of Black revolt and introduces a completely different temporality. Blues times eschews any reassurance. Pink. Girl, we love the notes. We love sticky notes. Blues time eschews any reassurance that the path of liberation is preordained. Blues times is flexible and improvisatory. Improv. You know, when you improv at the theater. It is simultaneously in the moment, the past, the present. In the moment, the past, the future, and the timeless space of the imagination. As the geography Clyde Woods taught us, the blues is not a lament, but a clear-eyed way of knowing and revealing the world that recognizes the tragedy and the humor in everyday life, as well as the capacity of people to survive, think, and resist in the face of adversity. Blues time resembles the anarchist theory Yuri Gordon calls a generative temporality. A generative temporality treats the future itself as indeterminate and full of contingencies. By thinking of the Black radical tradition as generative rather than pre-generative, not only is the future uncertain, but the road is constantly changing along with new social relations requiring new visions and exposing new contradictions and challenges. Girl. Oh! We are now I just felt like I needed to sneeze. What we are witnessing now across the country and around the world is a struggle to interrupt historical processes leading to catastrophe. These struggles are not doomed, nor are they guaranteed. Thanks to no small measure to this book, we fight with greater clarity, with a more expansive conception of the task before us, and with even more questions. Cedric reminded us repeatedly that the forces we face are not as strong as we think. They are held together by guns, tanks, and fiction. They can be disassembled, though that is easier said than done. In the meantime, we need to be prepared to fight for our collective lives. Eat it up. Preface. Unhushable Wit. Pedagogy, Laughter, and Joy in the Classroom of Cedric Robinson. Written by Damien Sojourner and Tiffany Willoughby Herard. Introduction. In this preface, we offer readers a provocation and an invitation to explore the pedagogical tactics, strategies, and disposition on one hand, and the methodological pursuits, formations, and undertaking on the other, employed by Cedric Robinson, as a means to foster this conversation with readers and to reflect, honor, and explore the profound insight that Cedric regularly shared with his students, friends, family, and readers of his work. We have synthesized and recreated some of our favorite reminiscences about learning from him and with him in his lectures, during his office hours, and while collaborating on research projects. Robinson was an exemplary teacher, mentor, organizer, and scholar. Our intention is to link his everyday practices of political education to the multiple interventions that rise out of his classic text, Black Marxism. We include a section of poems and other epigraphs that speak to our interests in Cedric's pedagogy and its particular role in the practices associated with a living Black radical tradition. This is a curated reflection that relies on experimental, multivocal, polyglot queer epistemologies. Curating this preface is in this way picks up on Damien's findings about carceral schooling and how different that hegemonic social practice is from actual learning, and draws on Tiffany's work on the cross-generational queer Black feminisms necessary for recognizing the centrality of the racialization of poverty. It is risk-taking to write together for the first time, but writing this work together reflects Robinson's abiding refusal of dogma and suspicion of vanguardism. Let's underline a couple words to define. Baloop, 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 baloop. Ooh-oh. A set of ethics about pedagogy that each of us who engages in his work take into our classroom every day. Charles Self, who accompanied Robinson in a 1962 youth trip to the Southern Rhodesia then Southern Rhodesia with Operation Crossroads, referred to Robinson's unhushable wit. This is our motif for mediating on Robinson's pedagogy and the kind of laughter he shared with us in life and shares with us still on this page. Robinson's writing inspires laughter at the FOIBLES, foibles, and presumptions of the powerful. His mirthful delight about the creativity of everyday people was the key engine behind his unsparing critique of imperialism and racism, and it continues to sustain our studies and enables us to focus on becoming everything other than what they say we are. One of the ironic challenges that we face in the process is that Cedric Robinson was never interested in the business of Cedric Robinson. He was informed by a genealogical tradition that demanded rigorous pursuit of knowledge and learning on its own terms. He never had time for the trifle entanglements of self-promotion. Rather, his intent was crystal clear. A dogged focus that allowed the work to rest on its own terms and to build communities that would foster the beauty and joy of life. Given that so much of his scholarly work has informed theoretical direction within the fields of black studies, political science, history, anthropology, and sociology, it was not common for him to walk through the halls of major international conferences and go unnoticed. He did not cultivate followings, but preferred to dwell in the negative space time between premise and conclusion, those spaces of ambiguity, contingency, presumed absence. Robinson urges us to anticipate excellence from refused spaces and refused people. Oh, sorry, my leg is all up in your business. Yeah, I have a bad allergic reaction. La-di-da-di. It was not that he did not enjoy social engagement or relish conversation, but for Robinson, it was best to spend energy in thinking through complex phenomena rather than plots and plans to gain proverbial spotlight. Cedric taught political theory his whole career, and all of his books took the discipline of political science to task. He was a member of the American Political Science Association and joined fellow black political scientists and black politics movements members who walked out on that organization and convened at the following year in 1969 to found the National Conference of Black Political Scientists and the African Heritage Studies Association. He chaired the Department of Political Science at the University of California, Santa Barbara, training over 200 doctoral scholars in this field in areas of study including political theory, world systems, international relations, public policy, black and women of color feminists, racialized health disparities, black radicalism, African politics, Middle East politics, East Asian politics, Latin American politics, and film and politics. Woo! You gotta get comfy. We're reading a book here, y'all. When he chaired Santa Barbara's Black Studies Department, it was stocked with political scientists. Okay, we're laying down now. Charles McAuley, I think I said his last name wrong, Mcauley, Otis Madison, and Shirley Kennedy. This cohort of political scientists in black studies trained dozens of students who have both written about and been at the center of enduring movement politics across the globe. He was an anchor for the journal Race and Class and the most prestigious journal of the study of racism and imperialism in the Anglophone world. Studying racism and imperialism is more important than ever for historicizing contemporary protests, for treating the planet with dignity, for challenging the rise of fascism, and for navigating the oft demoralizing arena of Democratic Party conciliation. For decades, he and his wife Elizabeth produced the public affairs, community-based public access television and radio show, The Third World News Review. His legacy includes educating Southern California and global communities about the living geographies of struggle. That Robinson has been erased from so much of the history of the field of political science is a testament to his ability to rattle institutionalized power in life and after. Thus, we gather with you to think through Cedric Robinson's pedagogical praxis, the intimate ways of conveying knowledge that were imbued through multiple styles, techniques, and approaches. Specifically, we want to think beyond the conventional tropes that have come to define genres and understand the scholarship in a totality that encompasses the complex tones of being. We envision this not as a statement, but as a beginning of a long conversation and look forward to your engagement. 1. It is hard to talk about education in a country in which illiteracy is adored. It's hard to talk about education in a country where people take seriously such a creature as John Wayne and Ronald Reagan. For a black person to get an education in this country, has to have a lot of guts, first of all. And this institution, UC Berkeley, is like many other institutions, which means that it is a racist institution. There's no way around it. All the American institutions are racist, and to get an education under those circumstances is a tremendous act of the will, and also you risk schizophrenia. I'm not saying this because I think black people should not be educated, but what I'm saying is that black people very largely educate themselves. What you have to do is pick up the tools with your own intention. That's the trick. James Baldwin. Wheeler Hall, UC Berkeley, 1974. My life work has been made into a curse and a chant, and a little girl clapping hands to interrupt these moments of violence that separate the longings and desires for grounding with my sisters. Tiffany Willoughby Herard, little black girls hand clapping, hand cursing, hand chanting, the world we make with our black hands. March 9, 2018. How could such an ostentatious beauty be so damn cruel, so unforgiving? The waves on the sand, the gentle breeze that trails along the picturesque shallow bluffs. There is an unnerving sensation of being so close to nature's calming force and yet being in a state of constant uncertainty, angst. To put it mildly, Santa Barbara was not welcoming to black people. A similar statement that could be made for Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Binghamton, New York. Yet it was here in these spaces of cosmic dissonance where theory merged with pedagogy and practice. Forged within this dark matter, a collective force expanded the possibilities of being. Disruptions were registered and lifelong alliances were fused together. The style was unconventional. Very often, a meeting of two during Cedric's office hours in South Hall on UC Santa Barbara's campus would quickly turn into a gathering of 5 or 6. Boxes turned into chairs, and stacks of books disappeared to make way for a fellow traveler. Ideas that traversed continents, sprawled across decades, centuries even, congregated in a space just large enough to hold them tight. This was something different. It was spiritual. It was cathartic. It was invigorating. It was disarming. There was no pretense, no display of superiority, no spectacle or grandeur, just collective egalitarian study. Vulnerability was paid attention to, collective joy celebrated, critical inquiry demanded. We often sat for hours that turned into days, that turned into lifetimes of knowledge, camaraderie, mutual appreciation, and recognition of a shift. We were no longer burdened by the incommensurable. There was an intimate attunement to what could be and the myriad of ways of getting there. The cold winters no longer held the same bite. The brutal sun no longer stung. Working class consciousness unfolded a geography and climate growing up in the midst of Santa Barbara's frigid flamboyance and luxuriousness. Unburdened by what unburdened by what could not be. We were now emboldened with radical possibilities of what had been all along. Cedric sat there quiet and engaged, part of the collective effort, an encyclopedic polymath humble enough not to give us answers. His participation was centered in inquiry. Answers were conveyed in a series of historic anecdotes, analytical frames, proverbs, jokes, and lectures with a riveting historical reach, all of which required hearers to interpret and make sense and come to conclusions on their own. Cedric was a masterful narrator, his stories crafted in building blocks until the room was submerged in a 360-degree analysis of dense social phenomena. There was never a demand upon what we should do or an adherence to a particular method for how to understand. He was an irreverent devotee of the Black radical tradition as one blueprint for knowledge formation. A gentle nudge to acknowledge what we did not know, understand, a gentle nudge to acknowledge what we did not know, understand, or grasp led to an epic search for the root causes of complex and interconnected processes. It was what education was supposed to be, far removed from the grotesque displays of useless skills that would be diminished by the next new shiny object. Here was the strict attention paid to the politics of thought. There was never a rush to move beyond our capacity to fully comprehend the range of possibilities for undoing the severity of violence inflicted by Western epistemes. Robinson's cohorts of students across institutions and decades, right up to the youngest group, among them Stephen Osuna, Jonathan Gomez, Matthew Harris, Jasmine Yarish, Ismail, I don't know how to say this last name, Illescas, and George Ramirez, Angelica Camacho, and dozens more can attest to this pedagogical approach. 2. Demand from responsible party members that they dedicate themselves seriously to study, that they interest themselves in the things and problems of our daily life and struggle in their fundamental and essential aspects, and not simply in their appearance. Learn from life, learn from our people, learn from books, learn from the experiences of others. Never stop learning. Responsible members must take life seriously, conscious of their responsibilities, thoughtful about carrying them out, and with a camaraderie based on work and duty done. Nothing of this is incompatible with the joy of living, or with love for life and the amusements, or with confidence in the future in our work. Amilcar Cabral, 1965. Uniforms in brown plaid, Catholic sister teachers who came to my house in third grade to discuss world politics, the center of the world being Haiti after Duvalier, to them and us, rules about decorum and no scuff shoes, held accountable with penmanship and self-respect. Chatism? Catism, CATECHISM, and exclusion, sometimes right, often wrong, but also always multiple ways of knowing. Secular worldings, never the only ones. Driven 45 minutes each day to all white, mean, ugly neighborhoods. Only thing my mother said was worth being educated. Boarding school on scholarship at 12, which meant a thankful deference in every football. Latina teachers with mouths of effective chastisement, passing us plays, quesadillas, and tea, catering to the intellect, and welcoming us into the tiny apartments with alcoves full of books. I worry for you that your teachers take fewer risks than this for you in your education, and that no one takes the risks to educate you. Tiffany Willoughby Herrard, Poems About Your Education, 2013. Robinson organized with community-based groups and campaigns in Santa Barbara, Black and brown, left, and progressive communities. One particular story is told and remembered by several of us in many different ways. The story and its various retellings are a testimony to his commitment to community-led organizing and collective legal defense, activism that is still quite rare among professors. We are told that Robinson walked out of either the Franklin Library at the Eastside Black Community meeting of the Black Action Committee, Franklin Library at an Eastside Black Community meeting of the Black Action Committee, or the Downtown Central Library at an American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU meeting. Sorry, we're adjusting. Robinson organized with community-based groups and campaigns in the Santa Barbara Black and brown, left, and progressive communities. One particular story is told and remembered by several of us in many different ways. The story and its various retellings are a testimony to his commitment to community-led organizing and collective legal defense activism that is still quite rare among professors. We are told that Robinson walked out of either the Franklin Library at the East Side Black Community meeting of the Black Action Committee, or the Downtown Central Library at an American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU meeting. As he had done countless times before, headed towards his car. Briefcase in hand, he felt their presence before he saw them. Santa Barbara police officers interrupted his journey as they have done several times before. They demanded to know where he was coming from. He feigned ignorance to what they were requesting of him. His confidence was fortified by the community gathered behind him, who hung on every word of the interaction. Behind the deeply tinted window of the library by which he stood, a cadre of organizers, many of them attorneys, stood keenly observing the situation, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. The officers looked down at Robinson's briefcase and barked an order to reveal the contents. What's in the briefcase? He moved back, startled, as if he had been caught with the very evidence needed to crack the case. He pulled himself together and sternly issued a muted shout that rippled as it cracked through his vocal cords. Fried chicken! Now the whole large group, watching from behind the window, fell out in fell out in laughter. The simple case was that a black man with a briefcase at a library elicited consternation at best and rage at worst. To have the gall to study, to have the temerity to move about in the public sphere. A professor and a co-laborer in the transformation of this tiny stronghold of white power. Holding their bellies side and mouth as they walked out of the building, the group surrounded the officer as Cedric Robinson gathered himself. Disarmed and no longer in control, Cedric took advantage of the moment as the flummoxed police officers attempted to regain their orientation. He very calmly nodded at the group and continued his journey to his car. Robinson was determined to live for the we. In such moments in which we learn how to live and metabolize fear. This made him available to us in our grave questions. Don't play with me. Okay. He had retreated or not been so engaged in confronting the petty and lethal violence of policing. Had he retreated or not been so engaged in confronting the petty and lethal violence of policing, he could not have created spaces for political education. Here is the contradiction, the demand for dignity, the refusal to back down, the insistence that he was about to go wherever he damn well pleased, and the disarming cut. Robinson appealed to the absurd. His repository. RIPOSTE. I think that's how you pronounce it. To an attempted illegal search and seizure. Sorry. Having just left a meeting where people were likely conspiring how to fight exactly what violations of how to fight exactly such violations of civil liberties, unsettled and laid bare what Jennifer Eberhardt, ETL, call looking deathworthy. Robinson was a member of that generation quite adept to code switching across linguistic registers and geographical landscapes in response to the quotidian appeal to deadly state violence, and his retort didn't save his skin. It laid bare the racializing apparatus of the police stop. By inviting people to laugh at the alleged impossibility of a middle-aged black man in the community as white as Santa Barbara leaving the community center or a library at the dinner hour with his briefcase, he affirmed his own existence and held up a metaphorical mirror to the community and its insular norms. He defended his civil liberties and reminded his fellow community activists exactly how racial capitalism operates to contain and capture the psyche and the body. It's interesting. My teacher was talking about it's sometimes it's best to laugh in the face of oppression, to laugh at them, to make their violence, to make their lethality a comedy. You know what I mean? I'll do a discussion on. I'll bring up his discussion posts. I mean, blah 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 discussion. That'll be a different video. One of the marks of a truly gifted comedian is having the ability to hit on social, historical, and prescient issues in a calculated rhythm. The rhythm is informed by the pace set by the collective. There is an exchange of energy, and being attuned to its nuances and subtle changes signifies a bond around community struggle and desire for something different, something more profound. In this manner, Cedric was truly remarkable. His sense of timing was profound. In his 2005 keynote address at the Radical Thought Symposium at the University of California, Santa Barbara, Cedric opened his remarks by recounting on one of his first engagements with his dear friend and colleague, Gerard Pigeon. When I first came to Santa Barbara in 1979 and met Gerard, I found myself in the presence of a man whose generosity is boundless, whose intelligence, discipline, and love for the work and love for the people is fathomless. For me, it was quite easy to be his friend. We had one argument. I think it was the first month, he laughs. The first month that we were working together, and I stormed down. The center was on the fourth. And I stormed down because the center was on the fourth floor and the department was on the third floor. I stormed down to confront Gerard because, after all, he was a mulatto. That's funny. Cedric gives Gerard a long stare and takes an equally long pause at the audience gasps in horror and laughs nervously. So I thought I had an advantage. The crowd collectively releases into complete laughter. But he stole that away from me by reminding me that my daughter is a mulatto. So I had to change tactics. Let me turn that off. It's pissing me off, friends. I think I turned it off. Sorry about that. Not merely providing a lighthearted introduction to his talk, he thoroughly discussed what he termed the mulatto genre. Constructed by a burgeoning Hollywood cinema industry, the genre was marked by its deception of the bestiality and unnaturalness, the freakish nature of mulattoes, most famously demonstrated in the 1915 release Birth of a Nation. The intent of the genre was to undermine the sympathetic position towards socialism taken by a lighter-skinned faction of the black petite bourgeoisie, such as Mary Church Terrell and W.E.B. Du Bois. The goal of the mulatto genre was to both undermine a particular segment of the black population and ensconce the legitimacy of the racial regime. Cedric's opening made us laugh at ourselves while compelling listeners to conduct a quick self-analysis for ideas that promised to make us coherent through stupid myths about our uniformity. Such humor-based tactics were not uncommon for Cedric, yet his dry wit and unflinching desire to scrutinize power constantly keeping those with inflated senses of self on guard. He meticulously... I hate when I do that, bro, but it's a reminder for me to slow down, to take a breath, and try again. His meticulous writing and careful choice of prose in the pages of Black Marxism must be read and reread with an eye towards his scathing analysis of key historic power brokers and mythical constructions through the lens of comedic brilliance. Number one, to utilize such tactics in a harmful manner, Cedric punched up in a way that pointed out the absurd claims of those in power. He facilitated spaces of knowing for the collective who gathered with the intent to construct a new way of being in a world that they knew otherwise.